It's a big boost to India's firepower along the line of actual control. India-China line of actual control. India acquiring the spice bombs from Israel. Remember, these are the bombs that were used as bunker busters when India bombed Balakot. So these bombs were put on the Mirage 2000 fighter jets, and those Mirage 2000 fighter jets had crossed not just the line of actual control but the India-Pakistan border. They crossed the international border, went into Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and bombed the Jaish-e-Mohammed base at Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Now the same spice bombs are now being acquired at China line of actual control. So what are the weapons that India is looking at? Weapons, systems, arms that India is looking at. So you're looking at the spice bombs, you're looking at scalp missiles, you're looking at meteor missiles, and a lot more. During the course of the broadcast, we will tell you about this in greater detail. I'm Gaurav Sawant. We'll also tell you about the talks between the corps commanders at Ladakh. Have they achieved something? Remember, these talks have been on practically for 11 hours and counting. All that and much more. But let's get started. It's a huge setback for Pakistan. Information just coming in. Europe has banned all Pakistan International Airlines flights for a period of 6 months. And this because there are over 250 Pakistani pilots who are flying PIA, and PIA is supposed to be Pakistan's flagship airline. They've been flying PIA aircraft with either fake or dubious licenses. One air crash in Karachi recently led to a big investigation, after which first the UAE and now entire Europe has banned flights from Pakistan for a period of 6 months. That's information that's just coming in. It's a huge setback for Pakistan. It's also a huge setback for Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan, who claimed that he will take Pakistan to new heights, but he appears to be taking his country to new lows. I quickly want to cut across to India Today's Shiv Arur for more on this story. Shiv, this information just coming in. What more can you add to the fact that Pakistan's flights cannot fly to Europe anymore for 6 months?
Gaurav, it's a huge blow to Pakistan International Airlines, PIA, because the Pakistan-Europe sectors are one of the busiest sectors for PIA. There are lots and lots of flights that happen every single day. So this is going to cause a great deal of economic damage to PIA and to Pakistan. As you said, it's a flagship carrier that pays a lot of taxes within Pakistan. So huge losses as far as that is concerned. But also, very, very humiliating at the global level. This is a time when, global aviation is in a slump thanks to the COVID-19 lockdown. And even within that, for the European Air Safety Association or Administration, EASA, to actually take a call, which would have been very difficult at a time like this, only tells you how serious the issue at hand is, Gaurav. Like you rightly pointed out, apart from that tragic crash that took place recently, the real issue here is the recent findings revealed by the country's civil aviation minister himself, that at least one-third, possibly more, of all active pilots of PIA hold fake flying licenses. This has sparked a much larger investigation within the country over whether it isn't just flying licenses, but other processes, including maintenance, etc., could have been, shortcutted at the risk of hundreds of thousands of passengers who choose to fly this airline every single day. So for the EASA, which has very stringent rules to, with immediate effect, put the barrier down on PIA, is not only damaging to Pakistan, it's also very, very humiliating and points to processes and a work ethic at large within that country.
Oh, absolutely. So doctors from Pakistan get banned in the Middle East. Now you have pilots from Pakistan and airlines of Pakistan getting banned. Doctors also, again, because of fake degrees. Pilots, again, because of fake licenses. Pakistan or Fakistan? That's for Imran Khan and perhaps even for the world to decide. Shiv, stay with me. More breaking news coming in, and this is of immediate interest to what's happening in India. So India is all set to acquire Spice 2000 smart bombs, precision guided munition for India-China line of actual control. And this is extremely interesting. SPICE is smart, precision, impact, cost-effective bombs. India used this very emphatically and with good effect at Balakot when Pakistani terrorists were killed in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. Now more of these bombs are being acquired. Let me quickly cut across to India Today's Manjeet Singh Negi breaking that big story on India Today. Manjeet, after Balakot, India realized that SPICE on Mirages was a perfect combination as a bunker buster. The fact that more are being acquired and the fact that Mirages are flying in Ladakh seems to send out that signal that India is preparing for the long haul, Manjeet.
Well, Gaurav, the SPICE 2000 is the biggest conventional bomb that can be delivered by the Indian Air Force, and it used on the Mirage 2000 jet. And the Air Force will buy more SPICE 2000 air-to-ground stand weapon. And this same weapon system has been used in the Balakot airstrike by the Indian Air Force. And the current procurement would be done under the emergency power given by the Modi government to the Vice Chief of the three services.
Okay, Manjeet, stay with me. The other big story we're tracking here is the India-China border talks that are happening in Ladakh. And these border talks, this is third round of Corps Commanders talks that's been on since 11 in the morning. The last two rounds were held in Moldo on the Chinese side at Chushul at an altitude of 14,500 feet plus. Now the third round of talks are happening in Chushul and that's on the Indian side. Now the talks started at 11. India wants the Chinese to pull back from Galwan, pull back from Pangong So, pull back from where they've strengthened their defenses and brought in additional forces. More than 2 brigades, motorized and mechanized brigades of the Chinese have come in at Pangong So, at Galwan, in the Depsang plains. Of course, there's also the Chinese defensive deployment that's taken place at Chumar, because perhaps that's where Chinese expect that if something happens, they need to have a defensive deployment in that area. But this is a cause for grave concern. I want to quickly now cut across to Leh, where India Today's Abhishek Bhalla joins us with the latest. Abhishek, talks started at 11 in the morning. I believe they're still on. What's emerging? What's filtering out of that BPM hut in Moldo, in Chushul this time?
It's 11 hours and counting, Gaurav, and it's, the talks have already gone past gone past the time that they took place last time. Last time the talks lasted for about 11 hours, and this time it's another marathon meeting between the Corps commanders, and it seems that it might go well into midnight. A lot of sticking points still in those discussions, deliberations that were, that started early this morning, and both the sides took over from where they left in the previous meeting on the 22nd of June. As far as India is concerned, it's very clear that China has tried to change status quo at Pangong So, in Galwan, and the Chinese need to retreat. But it seems the Chinese want some kind of a compromise formula. They had said that both sides should go back 2 to 3 kilometers. That wasn't viable as far as India is concerned, at least in Pangong So, because leaving Finger 4, where Chinese have also been camping, would mean giving up your possession of an area that's always been under Indian control. As far as Galwan is concerned, the Chinese had reservations in moving back, stating that they are still 800 meters away from their claim line. And now these are not the only
but
two
the Chinese can't be allowed to manufacture truth and manufacture
like
facts.
And
Even if the standoff lasts, Abhishek, stay with me. I want to bring in Professor Bharat Karnad. He understands China well. He understands the Chinese mentality very well. And Shiva, who stays with me on the broadcast. Professor Bharat Karnad, what do you make of these border talks? This is round 3. But one, tension remains high, it's palpable, and the Chinese now seem to claim that the entire Galwan Valley is theirs, and while they've intruded in that area, they're saying they're 800 meters from their claim line of LAC, sir.
Yeah, well, negotiations aren't going to get you what you want. As far as the Chinese are concerned, their tactic is usually to tire the other side out. That's why these very long 11-hour, 12-hour essays as they were, at the negotiating table, where the other side simply just, tires out and gives up. At least that's what the Chinese expect. And that's been their tactic for a very long time. So please don't expect any real results at the Harinder Singh and Liu Lin forum. It's not going to happen. So where does that leave us? As you just pointed out, they are building up in the Epsang Plains. They have captured the Galwan Heights. They have captured the fingers 4 to 8 area between it, and India is left high and dry. Now, India has very little option. It cannot accept the kind of conditions the Chinese are insisting on, and therefore, like it or not, the Indian government will have to prepare for an action to vacate the Chinese aggression, whatever it costs. If you accept it, it'll merely, shall we say, incentivize Beijing to do more of this. Elsewhere,
absolutely.
All along, so there cannot be a give on India's part.
And unfortunately, that is what has happened in the past. We've lost pasture lands in the past. Governments accepted in the past, and the Chinese just kept advancing. The salami slicing continued. Shiv, you've been speaking to your sources on ground, and somewhere down the line, is there a quiet resolve that one, no change in status quo ante, no change in status quo will be accepted, status quo ante needs to be restored, and India does have a couple of aces up our sleeves, or are we only reacting to China?
Well, at the moment, it doesn't look very good, Gaurav, and Professor Karnad is right that, the attempts to change that status quo has left India with very little option. But that doesn't mean that India is not holding ground at the current situation. Things haven't moved forward, for the last few days, but quite the opposite of de-escalation and disengagement, ironically, has been happening over the last 3 days. Like I've just reported, there has been a marked increase in troop concentrations at the 4 friction points in Hot Springs, Galwan, as well as Pangong. So the Pangong issue, in fact, was the lead issue, like we reported as well, during the talks that are still currently on in Chushul. There is an emerging view that it doesn't look like anything's going to substantially move, until the winter months set in, and the dynamics of the winter season deployments sort of kick in. But even beyond that, the Indian Army is preparing for any eventuality, and I think Professor Karnad is right. The fact is, there can be no compromising and incentivizing the Chinese by allowing them to dig their heels in even further as the time goes on, because they will only treat that as weakness and then seek more.
Absolutely. We've committed this sin for far too long, losing 38,000 square kilometers earlier, now 43,000 square kilometers. This Chinese salami slicing has continued for far too long, but somewhere down the line, India needs to put its foot down and say, thus far and no further, and the Chinese need to roll back. Of course, it's not just military power, but comprehensive national power that's being employed, and we will talk about that in greater detail. Now, some of the steps that are being taken show intent of the government of India. Perhaps for once, the government is weaponizing our economy, our cyberspace, and lots more. So 59 Chinese apps have been banned, but that's not the only step that's being taken. Take a look at this.
59 Chinese apps like TikTok, ShareIt, WeChat, Shein, Cam Scanner, UC Browser blocked by Center. For threatening sovereignty and security of India and concerns over data security and privacy, accusing the apps of compromising user data and sharing it with foreign players. Chinese Foreign Ministry said it is strongly concerned and verifying the situation. TikTok, in a clarification, denied breaching privacy law and leaking user info. It said that it will meet government officials for talks.
And I totally stand by it. The government ने जो भी फैसला लिया है, कुछ ना कुछ तो अपने लिए हित के लिए भी लिया होगा. इसलिए सहमत भी हूँ और दुख भी है.
Several cybersecurity experts also welcomed the crackdown, but stressed on developing an Indian tech ecosystem.
most of the Indian users of these Chinese apps do not really comprehend that this data of theirs is constantly getting collected and is being sent to China. And once it reaches China, it can be accessed by the government there. It can be analyzed using big data and artificial intelligence.
So for those arguing that if we've lost 20 of our braves, all that we're doing is banning TikTok. Is that the only step that India is taking? Clearly not. Remember, we've lost 20 of our braves, but our 20 braves ensured that China lost more than 40 of theirs. That's point one. There are several other measures that India is taking, but we may still ask, is that enough?
The Su-30 MKIs, the Mirage 2000s and MiG-29 air superiority fighters soar above the Leh skies, forming a protective umbrella for the Apache attack helicopters to operate and for Chinook heavy lift transport helicopters to ferry men and material across Ladakh. The use of combat air power is sending out a stern signal to China across the line of actual control. India is willing to use combat air power to protect the country's territorial integrity. Incidentally, combat air power was not used in the 1962 India-China conflict. Banning 59 Chinese apps is not the only response to Chinese transgressions at Galwan and Pengong So in Ladakh. The first response came from Indian soldiers on ground who in unarmed combat neutralized over 40 Chinese Communist Party soldiers at Galwan. 20 braves of the Indian Army made the supreme sacrifice of their lives, pushing the Chinese across the line of actual control. Prime Minister Narendra Modi insisted that the sacrifices will not go in vain.
हमारे जवानों का बलिदान व्यर्थ नहीं जाएगा। हमारे लिए भारत की अखंडता और संप्रभुता सर्वोच्च है और इसकी रक्षा करने से हमें कोई भी रोक नहीं सकता।
The Indian Railways has announced the cancellation of a 471 crore rupee contract awarded to a Beijing-based Railway Research and Design Institute for setting up the signalling system on a section of the Delhi-Mumbai dedicated freight corridor.
We should also think of banning the rest of the participation of Chinese big firms which are with Indian firms, though that China is hit financially on that front also, and we should go for a total import ban of Chinese goods. Then only the situation will be better with the Chinese.
The Telecom Ministry too has got activated, with officials saying both BSNL and MTNL have been directed not to procure any equipment, hardware or software from either ZTE or Huawei of China for upgradation of systems. The Confederation of All India Traders Association has also listed out 450 items including cosmetics, toys, fashion and furniture to be banned.
नेशन फर्स्ट इज द फिलॉसफी। इसमें कुछ लोगों का नुकसान भी हो सकता है, कुछ जॉब्स भी जा सकती हैं, कुछ लोगों को तकलीफ भी हो सकती हैं, बट व्हेन गवर्नमेंट टेक्स अ डिसीजन टू बैन समथिंग, दे आर नॉट स्मॉल डिसीजंस, दे आर वेरी पॉलिटिकल रिक्वायर्ड डिसीजंस फॉर द बाउंड्रीज।
Chinese infrastructure projects including the 1,126 crore rupee Delhi-Meerut underground tunnel awarded to the Shanghai Tunnel Engineering Company has also been torpedoed. Several states including Bihar and Haryana are relooking contracts awarded to Chinese firms. Maharashtra is said to have put on hold a 5,000 rupee investment project from China.
As commanders on ground discuss the restoration of status quo ante at the line of actual control, government insists it will do all it needs to do to ensure that Chinese withdraw to the pre-May status along the line of actual control. With cameraman Kripal Singh in Delhi, Gaurav Sawant for India Today. Let me quickly bring in Professor Bharat Karnad. I also want to bring in Managing Editor, India Business Today, Rajiv Dubey into this conversation. Professor Karnad, the steps that India is taking, apart from military measures in terms of acquisition of weapons, will any of this have any impact on China?
Look, I think what they're preparing for is an Indian riposte. There's no question about it. Otherwise, they wouldn't be building up, as you have said, in Chumar and elsewhere on the Depsang plains. So they are preparing for it. The question is, are you going to be dissuaded by their preparation to meet your riposte? And this is the real problem. What you're trying to build up in the LAC sector, the 14 core sector, really needs to be augmented much further. Otherwise, I don't think with the present forces in being, you'll be able to manage the kind of action you want to literally kick the Chinese out from the occupied territory. Because, as you know, mountain warfare is very labor intensive. Soldiers have to climb up, fight. They have to, the infantry has to walk. So there are no lorried or transport and stuff like that, except in certain areas of the Demchok and the. So this is where you'll need far more forces than the 5,000 odd that we presently have built up to. I reckon that we need to have.
So I'm told the figure now is much higher. The figure now is much higher than the 5,000 that we were talking about. But for a moment, Rajiv Dubey, other measures that India is taking, in terms of not just banning these 59 apps. I mean, is this just cosmetic? Is this just symbolic? Is there something more concrete that India intends to do, Rajiv?
No, it's definitely not. And it all started with the tightening of the screws on FDI into India from China. Because if you see the direct FDI that has been disclosed by China mainland is only about 0.5% of FDI into India, which is only about $2.34 billion. But if you look at overall FDI that comes via Hong Kong, via Singapore, from Chinese companies' origin, it is a very substantial investment. It runs into 18 to $20 billion. And China has claimed only about $8 billion of FDI. India from mainland shows only 2.5. So India tightened the screws on this, saying that you need to disclose rules of origin. Similarly, the rules of origin, which are now going to be disclosed in e-tail, in GEM, in some of these cancellations of contracts. Now the cancellation of 59 apps. These are definitely not peripheral measures. These are very, very concrete measures where the government is planning to get into some kind of an economic warfare with China, where we are trying to ensure that we have those kind of levers which we can exercise, despite the fact that our import-export ratio, we are far more dependent on China than China is dependent on us. We are China is 10% of our trade. While we are only about 2% of China's trade. Despite this weakness, we have been able to exercise these levers where we are trying to ensure that we can hurt the Chinese businesses and Chinese investments where it hurts the most. If you look at just one example of ByteDance, just India excluding India from the ByteDance valuation is going to hurt its listing in the US markets very, very hard. If you see, 1/3 of its user base going away in one shot is going to hurt ByteDance very, very badly. So those are the kind of levers which the government is trying to exercise to ensure that it can pull those levers and exercise its options against the Chinese investments and businesses.
So before the balloon goes up, as they say, Professor Karnad, before the balloon goes up, if India, perhaps for the first time, is weaponizing economy. I mean, withdrawing MFN from Pakistan was a very small step, perhaps cosmetic. But here, are these steps cosmetic, or weaponizing economy will have an impact on China? Professor Karnad.
No, I doubt it very much, because the trade-off is, you have to look at it this way. They are doing all this to protect their access to the warm water port of Gwadar. through the CPEC. And they feel that our approaches to the Karakoram is going to in some way imperil that CPEC and the other BRI projects. So they have to then, pretty much set alongside each other the payoffs from the CPEC and so on, which the gateway to the Western provinces, Chinese provinces, the entrepot in Gwadar, to the loss of the Indian market in this fashion that the government has announced. And I think that the access to Gwadar and the energy inflow from Gwadar into Xinjiang, etc., through the CPEC is going to far outweigh the value of whatever we might be able to do. Because again, the trade balance...
in case the Chinese stay in our territory, that CPEC route will also not function, or will it? I mean, India will not be timid enough to let the CPEC route function if the Chinese are holding on to our territory, and that's where our air power will have a very crucial role to play. I've run out of time. On this debate. Okay, last 30 seconds, sir. Go on, sir. Last 30 seconds.
Look, I don't think we should overstate the air power and so on. Yes, our aircraft are going to be advantaged from the planes, fully laden, etc., and the fuel fraction, and those kind of things. The fact of the matter is, if you're going to bring in the Air Force, then you're going to have all kinds of complications. We should be prepared for the Chinese bringing in a bulk force from the mainland. And they'll do that. It's not a big thing for them to do that. So we should think our own air option,
but a stalemate
kind of salvation. It's not. So,
but a stalemate would be a setback for China, and we will continue to debate this. Professor Karnad, I've run out of time on this show, but we will track this story very closely. To all my guests, many thanks for joining me. A quick break. Lots more coming up on the other side with Preeti Chaudhary. Stay with us.
Hi everyone, Preeti Chaudhary here. Hope you like this video. For latest news and analysis, like and subscribe to the India Today YouTube channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon to stay updated. Thank you for watching.